So Andres and I are back today chatting about a brand that is one of the most well-known household names, which I could have guessed, but it was confirmed by my internet search, and that's WD-40. So I think everyone's heard of WD-40, probably has a bottle or a tube in their house. And as a PR professional, I love to see when consumer brands manage to get front page news for good news because it's not that often. Journalists don't like consumer brands getting free advertising unless it's something very interesting. And in
Mm.
this case, WD-40 has a secret formula that's locked away in a vault. I believe it's San Francisco, and the CEO and the CFO just got access after many, many years. There's like a handful of people who've ever seen the recipe. It's written on a handwritten notepad, locked in this vault in a bank. And they did a whole story about the secrecy of WD-40. And I found it interesting that the whole reason they've done this is they haven't gone out and got a patent for it. Because if they get a patent after a certain amount of time, it obviously has to go public and they no longer own the market. So, fascinating business reason with a resulting super interesting story. I found it fascinating, but I think I'd be curious to hear what your perception of that is. And also, I'm questioning how much does a WD-40 consumer care about that story? And what good does it
Yeah.
do? Yeah.
Hey,
What do you think?
that's a great question because you know, I can't help, and I've just looked at myself in the monitor here, and I just can't help but grin when you start talking about this story, WD-40. Why am I grinning about some freaking lubricant that you spray out of a can and to de-rust things and open doors and remove squeaks and all the rest. I mean, why am I doing that? But it's such a cool product. Does anyone not love WD-40? Does anyone say, I mean, fine, I'm sure it has some competitors, but is there anyone that says, yeah, I hate WD-40, can't
It's a
stand it?
good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people love that brand. And your question about whether people care about this incredible, fantastical story about the formula, we're talking about it. I find that it adds something. Uh, WD-40 is something that people quite likely have more than one can of. I know I have two in my place.
Yeah.
Next time I'm in Canadian Tire, I might just just grab a third. I don't know. It makes me feel even more positive. And it's a low cost purchase. Literally, it's a very simple
Yeah.
purchase. You just grab it off the shelf. You know you're going to be able to use it eventually. It's sort of like tape or glue or something.
Glue. Yeah.
Um, so it definitely adds something for sure.
Do you know what I like about it? And I feel like this is um a recent sort of feel, not that I this story just came out in January or February even. So I think it's been talked about before. I look to see they really don't have, if you will, an omni-channel strategy for this story. It's not on their website, which is really interesting. It's not on
Mm.
their Instagram. So it's something they seem to use in a PR sense only. And I do believe, obviously, it has earned media value because it's an interesting story, business story, human interest story, historical story. But I think I'm finding it even more interesting right now because it's such a human story in this world of AI, digital automation. It's so endearing that this massive brand has this handwritten formula on a spiral ring binder in a vault. Like, I love that side of it, and I hope they don't change it despite how digital the world is becoming. So I almost think it's gaining in relevance as things become more and more digital and automated.
Who would have thought that you could take an inanimate, mundane, theoretically, product and make it incredibly human?
Right?
It really is a remarkable accomplishment that you can do that. So I really like your take on the humanity shining through. You let's say I had to develop this product from scratch. Okay, we're gonna come up with a
Right.
lubricant. You spray it on stuff, and we're gonna make this a really human story. Okay, I mean you lead the way. Show me how. It's not an easy thing to do, and yet they've pulled it off.
They've pulled it off, and you know what's interesting? While they don't talk about the secret formula, I think they even call it like a secret club, the people who actually have the key to this vault and have seen it.
Yes.
But they're living that human vibe through their channels because, for example, on Instagram, they've got, real people's tips for how they use WD-40 and like industry hacks and DIY. And so while they may not specifically talk about that story, um I like how they're pulling in sort of yeah, it's all about people using it in their personal space at home and fixing things for their kids, for their family, for their, rental property, whatever it is, and it's very human stories, and they've played into that in a way that I think links nicely without linking overtly to what that kind of secret vault formula is all about. So, I don't know. I never thought I'd be talking about WD-40. This is PR doing its job, isn't it? To get us to talk about it.
Well, you should give them a call because as you're suggesting that they're not really, to use a common phrase, leaning in on the whole secret thing. And of course, it makes me think of the Caramilk secret and
Good point.
how enduring that has been. Possibly my whole lifetime that's been around. The 11 herbs and spices of Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't know what the
Yes.
herbs and spices are and how they're all mixed together. The secret Coca-Cola recipe. I feel like those brands have talked, certainly Caramilk, I think stands out in my mind as the one that has made a big deal of it for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't yeah, that's a really good point. And Coca-Cola and KFC, you're right, do lean into that narrative as well. But they're much more overt about it. And isn't it interesting? It's almost become has it become less interesting because they talk about it so much? I don't know. Maybe this strategy of once every 10 years, they roll out the story of the secret WD-40 vault,
Mm.
and it's almost secretive in its own way. Because I think the last time it was talked about was maybe a press article 5 or 10 years prior. So it's really something they keep secret. And I really love that. So, yeah,
I think
I don't
people
know.
might get tired of it if that's the only if that's the predominant thing that you're talking about, share. But and there are ways to use a maxim that we both know well to be fresh, not new,
Good
and to
point.
refresh the story a little bit and come back at it with it in a different way. So certainly lots of potential there for
Yeah.
WD-40.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's fascinating that this sort of approach has allowed them total market domination. I didn't know this that the name itself and you've worked a lot in naming. The name itself, I mean, if that was presented to you at when the product was first developed, you might be like, doesn't really roll off the tongue. But in fact, the name WD has something to do with, the formulation itself. And then it took 40 times to get to this recipe. So I love that the name actually directly links to back to this like secret recipe. So yeah, it's a name that I feel has earned its place. Everyone knows it. But if you were to come up with it out of the blue in a brainstorming session, I'm not sure it would land.
Well, certainly not without some sort of backstory. That's for
Yeah.
sure. The W does make it unusual and in that sense stand out because there are not many brands that start. They might start with a W. Let's say I can think of Wawanesa Insurance, but you don't say the W in there. But this you're actually saying the
Yeah,
W. There's Weight Watchers which went to WW, and
which
I
is
didn't like
the
that at all.
worst brand
It,
change.
it, Thank you. I'm with you 100% on that, and nobody calls it that. The logo
Nope.
says that, fine, but I never understood why they thought that taking the most syllabic word in the alphabet, W, 3 syllables, and then doubling it. So it's 6 syllables. It's just really awkward. That's a whole other conversation. But here in WD-40, it actually sounds kind of strong because you're saying that duh,
Um,
the D sound, which is a plosive, it
alliteration.
connotes
Yeah.
strength. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And do you think there's any other household brands that have the same sort of you make a good point because we've talked about sort of those divisive brands that everyone hears like Air Canada and everyone has a reaction. WD-40, nobody's really mad. Nobody's mad at it. What other household brands
No.
do we all know that nobody's really mad at? Maybe Kleenex? Kleenex? That
Kleenex, sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Great.
uh,
Great. I think of Post-it notes, which kind of
good
cross
one.
that boundary between being a household and an office item. Post-it notes, I think, is in that same category, a similar category to WD-40 in that everyone loves it. And there is a simplicity to it, a remarkable simplicity that appeals to people.
Yeah.
The idea way back, and that's part of their lore, whoever the engineer was who came up with the Post-it note, it certainly would not have seemed. It took someone with great foresight to say, "Yeah, that is a great idea." Like, honestly, you're
Mhm.
gonna take a little piece of paper and stick it on something, and that's your idea? You came in here with that? So, I think that the simplicity there is a good parallel to the WD-40 story.
Yeah, good one.